my best athletes or entrepreneurs or like whatever the discipline is that they have, they know what it is that they want. They know what they want to go and create, and they have that sort of internal conviction that they can go and make that happen, which is, the technical term in the world of psychology would be self-efficacy.
So having worked with so many high performing athletes, again, we're talking world class, right? And top of their field, as well as, I'm assuming, high performing, business owners, CEOs, entrepreneurs, people who are doing something incredible, trying to change the world. What have you seen, aside from the fact that they understand and use the concept of the alter ego, what other traits or behaviors or decision-making patterns have you seen that they all share in common?
Well, statistically, athletes and entrepreneurs are on the risk-taking sort of spectrum. They're the second highest risk takers amongst any vocation or career. The highest risk takers are actually generals in the military, statistically speaking. Athletes and entrepreneurs sit at they're rated kind of number two. And so as a quality and a trait, they're very good at risk taking. Now that doesn't mean, a lot of people think that entrepreneurship is about just like, burning the ships and going, it's like, that's actually a rarer form of the successful entrepreneur than what is typically told. It's about making, smart moves, but that's
about calculated risks, we call them. Like you take a relatively small risk compared to the reward you're going to get. And you can also sit down and mitigate it by, thinking, what if this happens? What if that happens? So a lot of my entrepreneurial friends are kind of like that. They won't just jump into the pool, right? They'll have a life raft ready, a guard, something.
Yeah. And especially in your world, in helping the people that you've helped, one of the best things that you could probably do so that you avoid looking desperate to a client is actually maintaining your main job that you have and then hustling on the side. And that might not sound appealing to a lot of people, but from an emotional standpoint, it gives you a lot of gifts to do it that way. So, so risk taking is a trait and a quality that they all have. The ones that are at the top levels, and I saw this with one of my clients in New York City when I first moved there in 2007. He's a private equity guy, billionaire, and I was leading a discussion and facilitating a discussion for his board of directors to help get them all aligned, because there was a lot of like infighting, a lot of huge egos. And so I was talking about, we were trying to align values. And I asked the question, well, let's actually talk about what we don't want to have happen, which is a useful tool. Like you've heard that, like, hey, who don't you want as a client?
Sure.
And afterward, you pulled me aside and he's like, hey, this is going great. But I just wanted to kind of touch on something that you had discussed with everyone, which is, what don't you want? He's like, in my experience of all my most successful friends, they know what they want. And so we had this long discussion about that idea, and it's always anchored in my mind, and it's very true. So we say, hey, hey, write out what you don't want to have in your business. But at some point in time, you better get really good at, without needing that crutch of don't want, what do you want? So my best athletes or entrepreneurs or like whatever the discipline is that they have, they know what it is that they want. They know what they want to go and create. And they have that sort of internal conviction that they can go and make that happen, which is, the technical term in the world of psychology would be self-efficacy, which is your belief in your ability to make something happen. So they're risk takers and they know what they want.
Interesting, because I was recently watching the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary, and he shows that quality like throughout, because every time they kind of switch and discuss the next chapter of his life, whether it's achieving success in bodybuilding or going to Hollywood and doing real estate or becoming the governor, every time he says the same thing. He says, I see it in my mind. I know, like I knew what I wanted. I can see it. and he just goes for it. Like there was never a doubt, according to him today. There was never a doubt in his mind
Hmm.
about achieving that goal.
Well, and that's also, he can language it that way because he has he's standing on top of a mountain of previous wins that only reconfirm that he has the capability and capacity to go out and do that. So, but you get to like the third thing that I would even just mention is the ability to create a vision in your mind and see yourself. Because it's one thing to know what it is that you want. It's another thing for someone to be able to see themselves going and doing it. And people talk about visualization as if it's an easy thing to go and do. And as someone who's been teaching it for, I'm going into my 27th year, it's actually a challenging skill for people to see the vision of what it is that they want or see themselves doing something, because it's very easy for us to see ourselves not doing something, seeing failure happen for, because it's sort of the way that our brain is built. It's this negativity bias, and it's actually there biologically to help keep us safe. What's behind that bush that's over there rustling? Is that a saber-toothed tiger, or what is that thing? Like our brain can naturally go that way. So we have to rewire it in many ways to see what it is that we want, which is a hallmark of people who, just get different results than others.
Interesting. I've always struggled with visualization. Like I've always relied on the crutch of what I don't want. I'm a problem solver, so I would always look at the problems that I'm facing right now and kind of go fix them rather than create a vision.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Can I give you a tip on that then?
yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Stop calling yourself a problem solver. Because being a great problem solver doesn't mean that you're necessarily moving in the direction of where you want to go. I find this a lot. Like I like one of the things that I'll tell people if I'm on stage or even in my own mentoring programs is that in my skill set now of doing coaching and mentoring with people, my favorite thing is making problems disappear. And problems can disappear because of the way I reshape the frame for someone, or just challenging you back and saying, Igor, that's not the problem. That isn't the problem. I know you think it's the problem, but you came to that conclusion based on your limited awareness about the scope of what it is that you're pursuing. Isn't it true that you may not know some things? Okay. And you came to conclusions about whatever it is that you're going through, and your conclusions that you made are based on your experience, your knowledge, et cetera. And is it possible that you came to the wrong conclusion? Because if I can get you to that place, I can maybe unshackle some of the weight of the problem from you. So it's not about becoming a great problem solver. You are an excellent solution finder. Solution finder in the context of what it is that you want. It's like, Igor, I would probably say this is off, and I mean, this isn't about coaching you right now, but I would say it's a very frequent thing for someone like you who's had the successes that you've had, that you got to where you are because you were good at solving certain problems, and then it became a big part of like how you see yourself and your identity.
Yeah.
But there's a purgatory that happens in the evolution of any human being, that the longer that you hold on to an identity that no longer serves you, it keeps you stuck, and you're like, man, why can't I break through the $2 million mark? Or why can't I? And it's because you haven't created the new identity that takes you to the $10 million mark. And so a part of that is also changing up some of the paradigms. And the one thing I try to give people is stop being a great problem solver. Now you're a great solution finder and creator of what it is that you want. And it really is a super next level skill when you start reframing it, because problem solving, I know a lot of people who are great problem solvers and they're not leading the lives that they want.
I know exactly what you mean. And I believe that this year I've learned to understand what it means to, like you said, rather than solving a problem, making it disappear, as in, if we embark on this path A, these are the problems, but rather than trying to fix these problems on path A, we can create a path B where these problems don't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like creating a whole new reality by changing the frame of how you perceive yourself. I remember being at a seminar or an event where Dan Sullivan was speaking, and he said something that really struck me as both as somebody who is interested in high performance and constantly tries to improve, as well as a dad, because being a father to especially my daughter, I believe with her is where I need to really show up for her to grow, basically,
Yeah.
because women, the messaging women get is a little bit different than the messaging that boys get. And
Oh,
look at my
absolutely.
son today, and my son doesn't seem to need any coach. He kind of like, he just goes for it. There's a lot of more risk taking, a lot of more self complimenting happening there. So he said, and I might be butchering it, but he said something along the lines of that we achieve 100% of our self image, meaning that the only thing that's limiting us is our own vision or perception of ourselves, of who we are. So what you're talking about is the ability to change that, to
Yeah.
set a new ceiling for self-image.
Yeah. And so, I'm so happy that you brought up the concept of self-image, because it's not a new term. Maybe a lot of your people have already heard the term before, like, what's your self-image? And then someone comes along and they prescribe some sort of idea to help you build your self-image. The problem has been that a lot of the ways that people say, oh, you just got to show up as your authentic self, or you just got to, see yourself doing it. Well, the challenge is there could be a lot of big reasons why someone can't see themselves do it. And that gets to why the alter ego method and concept for me was always so powerful, because Igor, just to go way back, I became known in the world of like pro sports and Olympics as, if we need an athlete to change and shift rapidly, they're playing at the US Open on Saturday and it's a Wednesday, I'd get a call. Because I just don't wear the belief that it takes a long time for you to change. But I also was able to do that because I had a better method than other people, which was the moment, because human beings will always act through whatever they associate themselves with. Your identity shapes your reality. So we always associate ourselves with how we see ourselves. That's the self-image thing, to the point about what Dan Sullivan was saying. So, but the alter ego is powerful because it's giving you a brand new image, not of you, with all of your narrative and belief of what you think you can and cannot believe. Because someone looks at you, Igor, and says, well, of course, Igor can do it. He's an immigrant to Canada, and those immigrants, like, they just see the world differently. They see opportunity. So he came in with a better lens than me. I grew up in Canada. I grew up in America. I grew up in the UK. I just don't see, like, because I know people think that. I know people think that actually immigrants have a leg up on the person who's native to the land for themselves. And so, well, okay. So if that's natural, grass is greener on the other side, right? It's a natural thing that human beings do. Why don't we leverage that? That's what the alter ego does. You disassociate from your own narrative, and now you can step into the narrative of someone or something else that you can naturally see happen, which then gets to your whole challenge around visualization, which is a completely, there's a lot more meat on that bone that we haven't talked about, why that's actually fraught with a lot of pitfalls for so many people.